Most of my time is spent reporting on the public inquiry into the Grenfell Tower fire. In fact, I've followed every day of that inquiry since it started way back in 2018 for the BBC's Grenfell Tower Inquiry podcast. And so when Ben WK messaged at BBC More or Less on Twitter asking us to check out a claim by the government's Minister for Building Safety, Stephen Greenhalgh, who are you going to call?
Kate Lamble.
Quite.
So what was the tweet?
Stephen Greenhalgh's tweet was praising the progress made by the government's building safety programme, which was set up to help replace dangerous flammable cladding on the outside of high-rise buildings, including a type called ACM, or aluminium composite material. Flammable cladding materials like these were banned in England and Wales in the wake of the Grenfell Tower fire. And Stephen Greenhalgh wrote,
100% of high-rise social sector buildings have unsafe ACM replaced or work underway. Around 95% of all high-rise ACM buildings fully remediated or have work on site.
Now, ACM is made of two very thin sheets of aluminium, less than 1 millimetre thick, either side of a typically combustible plastic core. It's exactly the same type of cladding which was installed on Grenfell Tower, and it's already been found to be the main cause of the spread of that 2017 fire, which killed 72 people.
So is the minister's claim right?
Well, in total, 462 high-rise buildings across England have been found to have this type of cladding installed. And as of New Year's Eve 2020, only 45 buildings had not started work to remove the cladding. None of these were social sector residential blocks. So technically, he's right on both the points he makes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Kate. You are listening to
Hang on, Tim. It's important to note that the minister was very quick to lump together buildings where the work is finished and buildings where the work has started. And as someone who's had scaffolding up outside my own home for months now, I can assure you those aren't the same thing. It's true that work to remove combustible ACM cladding has started in every high-rise social sector building, and in most of the private sector ones too. But in many of them, it hasn't finished. In fact, there are 120 high-rise buildings where the work has started, but the combustible cladding has yet to be removed. Together with those buildings that haven't even started yet, they make up more than a third of the total. And I'm willing to bet the residents in those blocks don't feel the problem has yet been resolved. So it's been 3.5 years since the Grenfell Tower fire, and more than a third of the buildings that had dangerous ACM cladding still have it installed. Across the sectors, the problem has been fixed in over 90% of social sector buildings, but less than half of private sector buildings. And all of this, Tim, is months after the deadline. The government pledged that all this dangerous cladding would be replaced by June 2020, except in exceptional circumstances.
Well, is a pandemic not exceptional circumstances?
Well, the government has said that replacing this cladding was so important to public safety, building sites should remain operational, even during the height of the first lockdown.
So it's fair to say that the problem is being addressed, but it's not finished, and it's well behind the promised schedule.
Actually, Tim, even that is sugarcoating the situation, because this data only looks at high-rise buildings, those over 18 metres in height, and the removal of one very specific type of cladding. The government has estimated that there are around 1,700 high-rise residential buildings in England with other types of potentially unsafe cladding installed. There's no detailed data available about these replacement works. The Secretary of State for Housing, Robert Jenrick, has acknowledged that there's clearly more to do with other forms of cladding.
Well, thank you, Kate.